them is the cost of this insurance, and we are not competitive with the surrounding states, and so they move. So if we were able, for example, to just get to be competitive with our rates with neighboring states, I think businesses would say, okay, you know, I can accept a little bit of a hike in my taxes because I'm going to see a decrease in my costs on the insurance side. Property taxes are another thing, freezing our property taxes so they do not continue to go sky high. Now I know a lot of our schools and that are funded by property taxes, our municipalities are worried about that because what happens with the cost of pensions or other things that are unpredictable, it leaves you no wiggle room to be able to manage your budget. But I know that you all know that there are hundreds of unfunded mandates that the state has passed that our school districts, our municipalities have to abide by. And I think if they went through and got rid of some of those that were not critical for something, we could probably give the cost relief by getting those costs out, that would allow us to hold property taxes firm, at least for a while, and give our municipalities and schools, et cetera, the capability to manage within a narrow range of costs. So I think those two things, honestly, could make a difference. If we did that, we could go and tell our businesses, look, here's the plan. We're going to have to raise taxes right now, but we're going to give you some relief on the cost side. And the money that comes in from this tax increase is going to go directly to pay down this bill backlog that we have and get ourselves out of debt, not to other things, which is where they spent it before. It was not spent to pay down the bill backlog, or we would not have all these bills. And with a growing economy, and if you're business owners, about the power of growth of your business, brings in more revenue. Growing businesses pay more in taxes. People who are working pay taxes. All those things help. It expands our tax base instead of taxing our businesses out of state. It's really working with the business community more as partners in trying to get Illinois' economy growing versus trying to tax the state. So I think the combination of those two would be a difference. But I'll tell you that if we only raise taxes, I think we would drive businesses out of state.
I think just the answer you had a question?
Well, you mentioned in your remarks our bill, which we were very happy passed the legislature, and then the governor vetoed it, and had the occasion to read the governor's veto message yesterday, which really didn't say much. But you mentioned also in your remarks that it wasn't funded. Can you tell me what new funding came in for K-12 when the governor did sign that bill?
So that was part of the very original budget. So the legislature sent the governor, and it's the governor's and legislature's job in our Constitution to pass a balanced budget. I will tell you, we have not had a balanced budget in Illinois since 2001. There has been consistent practices of shifting bills from one year into the next, doing all sorts of games. This is why we have all these bills that are unpaid. So when the governor got the budget comes in several bills. He signed the K-12 bill. So that is the only part of the budget that actually was appropriated from the get-go, and that's how that was funded. The legislature sent him the funding for it. He said, okay, I'll sign it, and that's how that went. All these other things are not funded. So unless the students go, to court and get a court order that forces me to pay, I can't make a payment. But then even if I get that payment, that court order that allows me to pay legally, I don't have the money to make the payment. So I think the total is $700 and some million that goes toward those MAP grants. I had to postpone and delay the pension payment in November, where we'll be making it up in April when we get more revenues into the state as a result of taxes, because we were literally out of cash and we could not make that payment and the Medicaid payment and all the other court-ordered payments. So what they have to do is say, here's how we are going to fund it. Here, there are funds in the state that funds could be pulled from, although $700 million is a lot of money. They need to put money with it so that I can actually pay it.
Okay.
Rather than take a...
Just one more question, and thanks so much for coming and explaining the situation to us. I think it's very helpful, and I have to say, I admit applaud your optimism as well. What if, okay, the state of Illinois won the Powerball? All of this money came into the state, and things are going to move on. How long, with all the backlog of bills, how long would it actually take your office to get the money out?
Well, the Powerball, what was that Powerball, like $1.5 million or something like that? I mean, you can see in the scope of 7.2 billion of bills sitting here right now. It's like a lake.
My point,
We
the
actually turn
backlog
bills
is so
around.
large.
We have about 48 or 50,000 bills in the state right now. That is the total of that. And we actually turn Medicaid payments. We have $1 billion that we owe to pay Medicaid for. We turn those bills around within days. So we can get the funds out very quickly, and I have a really great staff of people doing that. As soon as we have a legal way and the funds available. So if they were to pass the MAP grants and say, here's how you're going to fund it, we could turn those payments around within, I would say 3 days, 4 days. We would be out having them. And turn them around very fast. We have to have the voucher in-house from the Department of Education.
If it's part of the bill for us, I'll get together with Rich and collect the check myself. Sure.
I want to ask the other side, not what if we win the Powerball, but the other side. First of all, though, I want to say thank you for the efforts in your own agency, your own department of the government, that you're trying to reduce all of your expenses internally, and I'm hoping that that's going on in everybody else's office. And I kind of wonder if you would tell me if it is or not. But what I'm thinking of is that, first of all, we love the graphic. It's very clear from this. But this is the way it is. This is the way it is last month. This is the way it is the month before. What's it going to take? And what if we go through this whole fiscal year? Because there isn't any magic about today as opposed to yesterday. This problem has been around for a while. You're talking about a problem that's been around since the fiscal year started, but obviously the problem's been around 14 years. So, what's the magic? What's the impetus? How is anyone going to see that something needs to be done? And what if the same attitude continues and nothing does get done? Then we walk into fiscal next year, and we are facing a whole nother year where nothing happens again. I mean, so I'm seeing this as not what happens if everything's wonderful and how fast we can do it. How long can we survive?
Well, every day we get more revenue from the state. So, we won't run out of money. Every day we'll have something. We'll just build this backlog of bills. It will take us longer and longer to get the payments out because we have to wait for the money to be available. And at some point, we'll probably miss some deadlines on things, but we will, get a payment out if it grows large enough. I mean, the thing that I notice, and this is why I actually do this, pass out this information, I honestly have legislators who come up to me and ask me, why something can't be paid. Why we are late paying something. I know we have all these bills, but can't we just pay for this? And the example of the student MAP grants coming forward, passing the legislature with no way to pay for it, is an example to me of the fact that they just do not understand how bad the financial situation is in the state, which is why I think it's helpful to get those zeros off. And when people hear $100 to pay thousands of dollars worth of bills, suddenly it hits home that we're really out of money. I think, so I'm working really hard to try and get that message out to people, hoping that they will understand we have to do something differently. If we go through this whole fiscal year without a budget, and I'm hoping we'll get a budget then for this next fiscal year, I have talked to the governor's budget director. We have incurred, we have signed things with agencies, organizations all around the state to provide a certain level of funding pending an approved budget. Without an approved budget, what does that mean? We can't pay anyone. So they are starting to think now about how we can, without having everyone have to go to court to allow us to make a payment, how they can build into a new appropriation for the next budget, a line that says, including paying back expenses due at, some level that, whatever. So we are starting to work on how that actually would work, to get these payments from fiscal 16 caught up if we go through the whole year without a budget. I don't think anyone until recently thought that we would go through the whole year without a budget. I thought after the first of the year, when people came back, we would get a budget in place. Or I heard after the primaries, when people didn't have to worry about being primaried for their vote, we'll get a budget in place. But now I hear people say that they might not have a budget at all. And so we really need our legislature to understand the importance of this. And we have senators and representatives from this area that we can reach out to and implore them to go to their leaders and explain how important this is to get a budget in place. There has been just as an example, we have, there's a lot of costs that are fixed in our government, which is part of the issue of this budget. Our pensions have to be paid. That's over $7 billion of our revenues. Our Medicaid expense has to be paid. We pay out $16 billion. We get $7 billion back from the federal government. Net that's $9 billion. So now we're at $16 billion of our $32 billion in cash. We have $2 billion of interest on debt that we owe as a result of borrowing to plug budget holes over the past many years. $2 billion. That has to be paid when we default on our debt. We have salaries that have to be paid under federal labor laws. And there's a union contract out now that's not negotiated yet because they're asking for contracts that would add $3 billion in cost to our government. We can't afford it. And so we need our legislators to go and vote on behalf of us to be fair, but to be realistic about we have to pay for this. And we're not going to have a $40 billion budget in the state. We'd have to raise taxes too much. To do that, we would destroy our economy. So they could be helpful, and they need to have loud voices on our behalf.
That's right. And I've asked, hopefully all of you, if you haven't yet, call your legislators, talk to them. I talked to Senator Morrison, State Representative Scott Drury in my own area. I'm asking all of you as trustees, and we'll be asking the rest of the members of the CLC committee very soon to contact your legislators. And that's the only way something's going to get done. Leslie cannot do it herself. It has to be some piece of legislation. And I had a very good conversation with Senator Morrison, who is my state senator, and she would have been here tonight, except she had to go out of town. And I invited Scott Drury, the state representative of my area as well, to be here. But now's the time. We are elected officials, and all of you see the situation we're in. We get, out of our $100 million, $8 million from the state, which we're not receiving. We are in the process of building the budget for 2017. If we don't get some relief pretty soon, there will be some major issues for the next year's budget here. I can guarantee you that.
Well, Dr. Griffin, also, I think most people here know that we have worked really hard here in College of Lake County for a budget that has a healthy reserve, which takes us to the next step, which is the AAA bond rating, something that is unusual to think that in the state of Illinois, there are entities of government that do have AAA bond ratings. If we keep drawing down our reserves, that AAA bond rating is going to be in jeopardy, and that's a very important piece for our taxpayers here locally, that any money we borrow is borrowed at a lesser rate because we have a AAA bond rating. So that's very important to us.
And that same goes for our county in total. Being a Lake County resident, I know we have a AAA bond rating here in Lake County totally. And, I know that our county board president, Aaron Lawler, has talked about how the county has had to step in and start providing services that the state normally has provided, which is affecting our budgets. And the same thing, it definitely has a ripple effect everywhere. And the state's financial situation has a ripple effect everywhere. And we have to get it solved.
Any other questions to listen from the trustees? I know we want to talk a little bit about the capital development bill that we'd like to see if we couldn't get that going. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. And know, that's a good required piece of legislation as well. Any other questions or comments to Leslie, and the trustees, and the student trustees? Did you want to make
Well, one of the issues we have, you can kind of